You're listening to the Ontos Podcast, where we explore the nature of stories and the pursuit of being and truth. I'm Vaud.
And I'm Maq.
And our sentience depends on you. Now cue the intro music.
It amazes me how many nations have united behind our purpose. There are still dissenters, of course, and some kingdoms regrettably have fallen to wars that I could not stop. Still, this general unity is glorious, even humbling, to contemplate. I wish that the nations of mankind hadn't required such a dire threat to make them see the value of peace and cooperation.
So, Chapter 9. We get a time jump. We're back to Vin training, I guess, the anime training arc, and she's fighting someone we don't know.
She's gotten significantly better at manipulating things.
Yeah, we get, again, just a showing of how Brandon takes like a chaotic scene and kind of formulaically breaks it down. And I don't know about you, but it was pretty easy to picture what was going on. Indeed. All the way to her catching herself, jumping off of trees, pushing on things. Like, it was pretty smooth. And we learned she's sparring Kelsier, and they have a pretty close fight near the end, and Kelsier, of course, comes out on top, but we learn at this point that there's been a couple of months time skip, and Vin is looking real good. Kelsier tells her that, hey, we're going to go ahead and split up now, and I'll meet you back at the mansion, and Vin heads back while Kelsier heads somewhere. Vin, during this time, and while she's fighting and after the fact and she's returning back, has this like feeling in her, and she says that this has always felt right to her. Like, she didn't know what she was missing. She realizes that she was missing some big part of her life by not pushing out and using these powers. And you can tell that, like, while she's using them and fighting with them, they feel really innate to her, and she's showing herself to be a real prodigy here. And I think, in my opinion, it's kind of starting to form a problem. Because we eventually get a little bit, I'm skipping ahead a little bit here, but we eventually get to a point where she's focusing so much on these powers that she doesn't seem to be trying or focusing on anything else. And so I'm kind of starting to get this weird feeling of, is she getting to that point where the power might be addicting, power might be alluring, and she's kind of pushing into it.
Well, admittedly, I'd probably also get pretty addicted pretty quick.
Yeah, but she mentions so often, going in. So she returns to Lord Renew's manor, and this is when she starts to worry. So Vin makes it back to Lord Renew's manor, and she's thinking by this point how nervous she is about the imitating a noblewoman part. She says, again, we get that feeling of she feels at home in the mist, yet here, having to imitate this noblewoman to be a part of the plan. It is absolutely terrifying her. She arrives back at Lord Renew's manor, and she points out how Kelsier was right about whoever's being an imposter, whoever's impersonating. There we go. Imposternating. Whoever's oh my gosh, you made me say it again. Look at that. Whoever's impersonating Lord Renew is absolutely flawless. He keeps such a strict schedule. He keeps such a strict tie on his workers. Yet he doesn't abuse them or do anything wrong to them. He just demands excellence. And she's like, yeah, this guy could hold up to anything. I wouldn't be surprised if we had seats of nobles here and nothing's gonna throw this guy off. And I think we see her making a big deal out of knowing every member of the staff so she can keep track of them, knowing everyone that she can see and hear. Again, kind of feeling uncomfortable with how clean and secure everything is. And she's in for a bit of a surprise because Sazid's waiting for her with a servant woman, and the servant woman is there to give her a haircut and get there to kind of doll her up a bit and make her look more ladylike. Because up to this point, she's kept her hair in a mess. She's done what Rena said, which is look like a thief first and a lady second. And so that, of course, is incredibly uncomfortable for her, and yet it starts. And Kelsier shows up here to tease her a little bit more. But we learn where Kelsier's been going after all the training sessions with Vin. Kelsier, after every session they go out and they train, he goes and attacks another great house. He goes and stirs up just general chaos. He dresses differently every time. He changes up his objectives every time. Sometimes it's to kill people. Sometimes it's to steal something. He's just changing everything up. And he's just trying to sow as much chaos with the great houses as possible. Well, Sazed sits Vin down and decides, hey, it's time to bother you a little bit more. Can I give you another proposal? And Vin's like, fine, sure. And Sazed pitches another religion to her, which we can assume based on her reaction that he's pitched several religions before this. Mm-hmm. And every time at the end, he asks her the same question. Well, did you like that one? And she's like, nope. He goes, all right, that's no problem. I'll find another one. And the religion he pitches this time is like Trelegism, something along those lines. And we learned that somewhere in Scadrial, in the northern part at least, there was a bunch of like mystics or whatever they called them, where they had like barely any light, like days were really, really short, the big nights and stuff like that. And the thing that stood out to me, which I found a little creepy, is he's like, the stars are Trell's 1,000 eyes looking down upon you. And
it was like anti-worship for the sun.
Yeah, and we like the dark. Yeah, we like the dark a lot. And Sazed said that it was a good match for Vin because of like, what was it like?
She liked the darkness too, like the Mistborn do.
Yeah,
because they like the mist.
She liked to be out of sight. She liked the concealment and everything. He's like, this is a great match for you, but if you don't want it, it's all right. I got plenty more. And
562.
Was it that, or was it 526? It was our
some combination of 5.
I wrote 526, which means it could just be
could be a lot of yeah. It was over 500.
500 plus.
500 plus.
There we go.
Belief systems.
Neither of us are wrong now. Well, the thing about Sazed though that we're learning here is that he has all those memorized. Vin asks him, "You have those memorized?" He goes, "Yeah, basically." And she asked him why. And he's like, well, it's because people are valuable, therefore their beliefs are valuable. And we're going to come to a point where the Final Empire is going to be no more, and people are going to want to return, with their newfound freedom or whatever it was. They're going to want to return to seeking out and understanding this knowledge that their forefathers had, essentially. And he refers to himself as a keeper of some sorts. At least that's what he calls himself. And he finds that it's a part of the Terrace people. He calls it a sect of their whatever they are. And it's their job to remember information that would be forgotten through whatever it is and pass it on once it's safe to. And we get by the end of this, Vin has gotten a wonderful haircut, and Kelsier comes in and compliments her, says she looks great, and he specifically notes, like, I need to keep complimenting her because we need her confidence up. She hides too much. She needs to be able to stand tall. But Sazed and Kelsier both walk out of earshot of Vin to talk about her and to see if she's ready. And something that stands out to me is Kelsier mentions that he's kind of nervous and he's kind of sad that he's pushing Vin at this point because he wishes he could train her so much more on her allomantic powers. He wishes that he could give her more time to train under Sazed to learn everything. And so Sazed goes, hey, how about you pass off some of your job to the other crew members? Have her go shadow people, or shadow them, because they're supposedly experts in their craft. And so you can focus on teaching her 1 or 2 of the medals, and you can pass off the other medals to the club, to like the crew members, essentially. And Kelsier loves this idea, but he asks the big question, is Vin ready? And Sazed basically gives him the answer of, I don't know, but we're leaning to no. And Kelsier goes, I feel guilty of sending her in. And Sazed goes, but that's not going to stop you. And he's like, guilt's not going to stop me. And I think that's a big thing that we see with Kelsier here. Like, he's talking up, and you can, like, he's our point of view character here, so we know he means it when he's saying he feels bad for doing this, but he still doesn't stop him from sending her essentially into the lion's den. And so he asked Sazed to be her terraceman, so to accompany her and to be her steward and just go with her to make sure she's safe. And Sazed agrees and says he'll protect her with his life. And we get another very interesting thing here, because Kelsier in his own mind goes, thank you, Sazed, I believe you, because anyone who wants to stand against a pissed off keeper is not going to have a good day. And yeah, it mentions, I think at one point, that they're so strong that the Lord Ruler himself just almost like hunted them to near extinction. And so what sort of power does Sazed even have? And that's kind of where we're left with this chapter, is that promise and really that heavy tone of Kelsier. Once again, every single time he's shown respect to these people, they've been expert or skilled in some way. And here he is saying, no one's better stand up to this guy.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the thing, is that this is one of the, comments of the hype trope, essentially, is that everyone's like super competent at something. And so if there's someone involved and it's respected, especially by the team, then they've got something going on. So, I mean, Sazed, again, interesting character, terraceman, who knows what that is right now. He's got something else going on, which Ven can already kind of tell, but, we haven't quite gotten there yet. When it comes to developments with Ven, she's saying, like, this is freedom, this is, like, a big deal for her.
Sazed's saying that he's essentially hinting that she must be a prodigy, because he actively says she's trying to avoid my teachings, as she picks him up quicker than I've seen really anybody pick them up.
I mean, she has that sense. She was able to name the houses from from ranking and power, which actually was a good name drop, because I mean, it once again pointed out that Venture is the top dog when it comes to the houses. But Kelsier was even saying, like, she was keeping him she was keeping him on his heels.
Yeah, he said that when they got into their pushing match, that she weighs like she's like half his size, weighs half as much, yet he admits she almost beat me. Right, and
it's at least, I mean, as far as we know, it's like a misting is a misting is a misting. Like, we're, spoilers kind of, we're in the next chapter, we're going to see that there is more to, dealing with these powers than just, brute force. But as far as we know, it's like if you put one person who pushes really, really hard is going to be the same as another person pushing really, really hard. Their ability to balance may be different. Their ability to, have coordination may be different, but their power and their reach is not going to be, it's not at least significant as far as we know.
Yeah, up to this point, we've learned that the power and the reach, at least from what Kelsier's been teaching us, has been having to do with like physical attributes. Like, don't push on something heavier than yourself.
Right, you may be heavier, but you're not going to be able to push more. Well, he's at least implying Ven was able to do something, doing a little bit more than he expected, at least for her size. And he didn't say anything about skill. It's just like, she was able to give me some force that I wasn't particularly expecting. And they ended up like flattening that coin that they were like fighting in between. And we see how creative Ven is, because, she throws the coins away as a distraction. And we know now that you can sense where metal goes by where the lines are going. So you would see like a big cluster of lines or a big line, move. And you'd be like, oh, obviously that's her and her coins. We also find out that coins are the weapon.
Yeah.
Which is funny, because this is me reading it a second time around. I don't know why ball bearings wouldn't be a more effective weapon, but I mean, coins are the thing.
Yeah.
I guess coins are, would be like slicier, I suppose, but like, but they use coins as the weapon to be able to push everything around. But it's also like their way of movement. It's their way of, being able to to go against things, which I guess would be better than a ball bearing. So, what I was kind of surprised about, and this is just like a little detail, was how Ven was willing to accept a haircut from a stranger.
Yeah, she's changing a little bit.
She's usually pretty paranoid, and you would think that someone coming up with sharp objects right behind her, and doing this would probably, spark some issues, because you think that she probably cuts her own hair, and before that, Reen was cutting her hair.
Yeah, he definitely was. Yeah, and the thing that, again, I'm kind of pointing out to what I was talking about earlier in this episode, like, I wonder, is this Mistborn thing here becoming an obsession? In the sense that, like, is she making progress in trusting people, or does she want to know so badly that she's willing to let them put her through anything to get more knowledge, to be able to practice more?
Maybe. I mean, I think about it as, like, it sounds like she's very good at it, and she's also getting a lot of positive feedback from Kelsier, and you hear him, like, say that he's actively having to give her positive feedback to boost her confidence. So, I mean, as far as, like, being addicted or even, like, conditioned, I think conditioned would probably be more of it. Or it could be that this is kind of calling to her, essentially. This is, like, something that's really starting to flow with her, and that's where she feels comfortable. And even Kelsier had said, like, as a Mistborn, you belong in the mists. Which
this is ours,
right? And so this is probably her going, this is where I need to be. This thing that I never wanted to get to because I was so, scared of it because of what the Scott would tell me. Now this is where I belong. And I think she's just kind of getting a feel for that. Now, yeah, I mean, there could be at least a bit of, like, oh, this is what I'm going to be more focused on, which I admit, again, if it was me and I found out I had superpowers,
yeah,
and they're like, oh, also, we're going to get you on this, like, side project, the cool powers are what I want to learn about.
Yeah. See, something I'm super interested about too is, again, we get a little bit more in depth into a little more of an in-depth look into Sazed, and it's really interesting that, again, this servant is demanding so much respect. Like, that's what they're known for, the terraced stewards. They're known as being I'm rich, I can afford a terraced steward. Mm-hmm. They're the best servants out there. Yet this is someone who Kelsier actively goes to for advice, and in this chapter accepts advice, recognizes that it's good, doesn't look down upon. He actively thinks that, and he actively believes that when he says, like, hey, like, Sazed's going to watch over her, I don't even need to worry. And to me, that's just super duper surprising. Again, it makes me want to know a lot more about the Terrace Men. And I think next chapter we're going to get a little bit more info on them, which is pretty cool. Hey guys, Vaud here. Thanks for listening to the Ontos podcast. You'll start to see regularly scheduled episodes starting November 14th, 2022. And if you'd really like to follow us, please consider subscribing. We're a very small project, so please support us with likes and comments, because that's what the algorithm craves. If you're listening on the YouTube channel, please hit the notification bell. And if you want to really give us a boost, consider supporting us on Patreon, because I really need a better mic.